Morning!
Morning!
Welcome to the India Explained podcast, recorded in London and San Francisco. One take, unscripted, no rehearsal.
Good morning, Bunty. It's overcast day here in San Francisco. I hope you have better weather in London. I thought, speaking of sort of foggy things, to kind of go with a somewhat stretched and contrived metaphor. Uh, let's talk about this sort of fog over the justice and political system in India. I'm referring to the two-part story run by Caravan recently, which raised the question of the mysterious and suspicious death of the judge, Justice Loya, who was
Right.
trying Amit Shah's case. So Amit Shah is, we know, the party president of the BJP, and he, had, I think in the previous elections, he was the one politician with the largest maximum number of cases against him, or something of that kind, and he's been accused of extortion. He's been accused of, a couple of sort of being complicit in a couple of killings. He was in jail. The
Right.
first judge who was trying the case was transferred. The second judge who was trying the case died. The third judge let him walk, and the CBI didn't present much of a case. I mean, there were 10,000 pages of documents, and they kind of summed up their case against him, I think, in 15 minutes. So obviously, there's a sort of element of farce here. This happened a few years ago. The judge supposedly died of a heart attack, but now there's been this fantastic story by a journalist, Niranjan Takle, two-part story, who's really spoken to the family of the justice, and they have raised these sort of serious concerns. Since then, a few other things have happened. One, there was a stunning silence from the press for the first few days, particularly the English language press. Since then, I think NDTV is the only channel that's actually carried a story in the English language press. Wire, which is one of the newer online publications, has actually raised this issue, saying that why is there this silence? But I do believe that the regional language presses, as well as the sort of Hindi language press, if you think of that as a kind of other pan-Indian language, also did carry some information about it. So I think these are some several related issues. One is the crisis of the judiciary, and I think it is a crisis. The political compromises that the judiciary is forced to make, the CBI behaving like a caged parrot, and then this question of the media kind of abdicating its role, particularly when it comes to prominent people in the BJP.
So you said the three judges, Rohit. The first judge was asked to step aside, the second judge died, and the
First judge
third
was
judge let
transferred.
him go free.
Yeah, these are judges in Gujarat. So,
Right.
and the third one, basically, I think the CBI also hardly, presented a good case compared to, I think, the kind of case they could have presented given the evidence that they had. And 15 minutes, the judge just let Amit Shah walk.
Right. Look, what can we say apart from, observe what is going on? Amit Shah has been at the vanguard. He initially was positioned as an electoral strategist, so a person whose genius at turning the fortunes of the BJP electoral gain wise. But I think with time, one of the things, and some people called it earlier, some people are calling it now, and probably some people will call it going forward. It's becoming apparent that he has a modus operandi, which is, as you get closer to the election, there is no strategy apart from creating a sense of tension that is picked up on a set of channels which are subservient to either their cause. So they're not independent channels. They're channels that are subservient to a cause and kind of articulate a particular worldview, which results in electoral gain, right? So, is it him doing it? Are there other people trying to do it? And India being the kind of country it is, there's probably the Congress party trying to engineer something elsewhere in another way. So I think it's not unfair, but it's not within the realms of outside the realms of imagination that the Congress party or some of the other local parties also try and do this, but they haven't been as sophisticated / devious as Amit Shah has been with his modus operandi, right?
Okay.
So my take on him is he's not some kind of electoral genius. He's just a guy who leverages tensions amongst communities on specific sentimental issues, whips it up into a frenzy using channels that are beholden to him. My segue from that is the whole idea of channels being beholden to particular political parties. And what that says for a functioning or semi-functioning democracy like ourselves, because Doordarshan, which is a state-controlled media, it broadly reports back on the facts as handed out by the IB ministry, right? I didn't know till recently that you cannot produce or run with news on radio. So it's almost so if you and me wanted to run a radio station in India which pointed out or came up with our own take on facts, we cannot do that. The only place that has the right to carry news in India on airwaves radio is All India Radio, right? And television is a sector that has been liberalized, and there are, I think, at close count, there are about 800 channels. What you've just said, that apart from one channel, NDTV, which again, we don't want to say that that's the beacon of fair play, because that channel also, with certain characters, has done dubious things in the past. There's somebody who's been calling out, saying that, look, the first judge got removed, the second judge got killed, and the third judge set him free. Surely there's a story that merits a second look there. And it's ironic that only one channel that has picked up on it. My question would be, why hasn't other channels picked up on it? What is stopping them from doing that? And it's almost like it's like pretending that it hasn't happened and hoping that it'll go away. And that to me is very strange. And the print media likewise, that if you are thinking that you will only call out facts that suit a particular orientation, then you're failing to do your job. And again, I'm not taking sides of a particular media channel, but I just think that, if you have to have the credibility, if you're speaking the truth, to speak up sides. So I'll give you an example. Amit Shah makes electoral gains. He does. That's a fact. We call that out. The fact that we think that Amit Shah does it in a devious, manipulative way, we call that out too. We also acknowledge that other parties may be doing the same thing. What's stopping a media channel operating in India on television saying that, look, this is what's happened judicially and it merits a second look? So it's frankly very disappointing that this has happened and nobody's speaking up on it. And what else can one say?
Right. So I think you've raised a number of issues, and these are issues that we've a number of crucial issues, and these are issues that we've gone back to time and again in different contexts, in the context of different discussions. Pardon me. So I'll just pick on a few things. I think first, you're absolutely right in saying that Amit Shah is certainly not the first criminal in Indian politics. In fact, there's a long and distinguished tradition, and there's I think there's a academic, he works for a think tank, Milan Vaishnav. He's written a very good book on the association between crime and politics in India, and he's looked at, he's really looked at these associations, and he's got an interesting argument and theory about the political capital that's generated out of crime. So we also know there are other parties. In fact, I would say that that have as distinguished or in some ways a more distinguished record on criminality when it comes to than the BJP. So the Bahujan Samaj Party, the Samajwadi Party, the TMC, these are all parties, and the Congress also has its share of criminals. You just have to look at some of these figures who were associated implicated in the riots of 1984. To me, what's happened, what is sort of particularly alarming, I would say, and I share your distress, is the complete subversion of the system at all levels, the impunity with which something of this kind has been going on. Because this case started with someone called Sohrabuddin Sheikh, who was arrested by the Gujarat Anti-Terrorism Squad and was murdered in an encounter killing. An associate of his was, who was witness, was also murdered in an encounter killing. Sohrabuddin Sheikh's wife was found, raped, strangled, and her body was cremated. And that happened in the village of a police officer, DG Vanzara, who actually was in jail. And again, since the Modi government took power at the center, was recently just let off. There was a special investigative team that found Vanzara guilty. Amit Shah was an MLA at that point of time. He served time in jail because he was associated with these killings. And the assumption here is that he and Vanzara is I think he was a DIG, I don't know what his exact designation was, something sort of fairly high up, but a high-ranking police official, they were sort of complicit. That's the understanding out here. Now, you have this relationship between the police forces and the political forces, and you have this complete kind of lawlessness or parallel mafia state or whatever you want to call it running. I think the media actually at that point of time did its job, and I don't think they did their job because there was a Congress government at the center. I don't think the Congress government is one that has never put pressure on politicians, but I just think we see it to an extent now which is frankly just absurd. And now, then to have the CBI weakened and defanged in this manner, and then to have this a media that is so terrified, to me that is almost more alarming. And I don't mean to trivialize any of these deaths. When I say the fact of what media is doing is more alarming, I don't mean to trivialize any of those deaths. My point rather is that there will always be people like Amit Shah, in not just in the BJP, in different parties. And that is, but to have people like Justice Loya, who apparently told his family, he said that I will make sure justice will be delivered. For people like that to have more people like that, to give judges the confidence, those kind of people, that kind of sentiment is what keeps a society running. And if we don't have a kind of larger system in place where our institutions and a broader culture can really produce people like that, then I think, we really are in trouble. I'll mention two other points and then, would be interested in seeing what you have to say about that. Allegedly, a senior judge in the Gujarat High Court, I think Mohit Shah, he offered the judge, Justice Loya, 100 crores for letting Amit Shah walk. That was the bribe that was offered, 100 crores. And now what's happened, I would just say, is that some of the mainstream English media has picked it up. Actually, just NDTV, but maybe, a couple of online publications have raised questions about 13 facts that are unexplained about the death, and so on. So we are seeing some stuff happening, and we are seeing some prominent voices in civil society. Admiral Ramdas has written a letter, saying that there should be a kind of probe. There are lawyers, prominent lawyers, who have Dushyant Dave, who's a lawyer who has said something about it. So, I think at least it's a good sign that we are seeing a little more of civil society and media speaking up.
No, and I think, Rohit, to your point, one of the things that we want to do, and this project, the India Explained project that we have been doing now almost for 50 episodes, one of our things that we do is to try and bring an alternative view. But on this one, the alternative view is actually a matter of fact view, which is not being, it sounds like an alternative view because nobody's talking about it, but it's actually material fact that has happened. So there's a study, there's a piece that has come out on this 3-judge number. Judge 1 step aside, Judge 2 kill, Judge 3 sets the man free. And then there's this question of 100 crore kind of buy off. So I think obviously that's distressing, and you think that, as civil society, what you do is you step up and say, look, I think this is going on, it is wrong, and somebody needs to take notice. And I hope that, and it's not a party political piece, because, again, we did something around Padmavati a while back, which was about, look, you may disagree with what the story says, but you have as a citizen of India, you have the right to, engage with the story and reject it. On this one, it's a slightly different thing, which is clearly there has been wrongdoing, and the redressal for that wrongdoing is being prevented from, or justice is being prevented from, playing out its full hand, or the justice that is being played out seems contrived. Doesn't seem contrived. It seems like it's been a slipshod arrangement. And you're so right in calling out that if institutions like the judiciary become beholden to the executive and scared of the executive, because the executive will keep flipping over, or notionally every 5 years, unless we're a one-party dictatorial system, will flip over. We need a strong judiciary. We need judges who can judgment without fear, people who can be brought in front of court law without fear. And this is all very filmy, and I think it speaks to the nature of the guy. He's kind of murky. He has a kind of a swagger. His son has been implicated or referenced in something that is underhand. Right. It's from a simple point of view, this was a party that was promising a corruption-free, honest alternative. I think it's come a long way from that, and is disappointing.
Completely. So I think maybe we'll just wrap that up. We are at around 15 minutes already, but we probably will do another story on this just to see what happens, because I think sometimes, even when there is a certain amount of outrage and the government feels compelled to take certain steps, eventually often governments just let these things kind of fade away.
Yeah,
Because the next
Rohit,
thing-
just jumping in. Can I just say something? We earlier on in one of our episodes, there were kids who died in Uttar Pradesh
And more kids
because
have died
of a
since
lack of
then.
oxygen.
More
Right?
kids have died since
At that point, the government jumped in and arrested a guy
Right.
who he said that he was helping the kids. The government said that he was being shifty with oxygen. That guy, again, I'm loose on the name, but that guy is set free. The courts have said that he's done nothing wrong. He
Dr.
tried
Shah,
to help
yeah.
people as best as he could. He was a Muslim doctor in Uttar Pradesh, right?
Yeah, I think his name is,
And I think it's beyond, as you rightly said, that sometimes we'll talk about a story not knowing where it's going, and on this one we know that that guy has been,
exonerated.
said that
It says Dr. Kafil Khan, here's a story in Scroll. Dr. Kafil Khan cleared of graft. Still
Correct.
faces attempt to murder charge, which to me is absurd. The attempt to murder charge is nonsense. They had basically the whole sort of right-wing, media complex, so to say, including, really sort of some of these third-rate online magazines and stuff. They were saying that he was stealing oxygen cylinders and so on, which turns out was just a bunch of rubbish.
Right. So let's circle back. Look, we've circled back on Dr. Khan on this one. We will circle back on the Amit Shah one. We don't think anything will change on this, but if it does, we'll come back to you.
Sure. All right. We'll be back in a minute with another story. All right, man. Take care. Bye.